The moment my wife delivered her joke at the graduation dinner, I knew our marriage was over. Not because of the laughter that rippled through the fancy restaurant, or the way her colleagues smirked into their wine glasses, but because of the look in her eyes when she said it. "Meet my husband, Jack," Samantha announced, raising her champagne flute toward me with theatrical flair. "He's proof that opposing forces really do attract. I argue cases in courtrooms, and he argues with people who skip leg day." The table erupted. Her law school friends practically choked on their appetizers. Nathan, her young colleague with the perfect teeth and expensive watch, nearly spit out his drink. Even Claire, Samantha's best friend who'd known me for 15 years, covered her mouth and giggled like a schoolgirl. I sat there in my discount suit, the only one I owned that wasn't stained with sweat from the boxing gym, and watched my wife bask in the attention. This was her night. Her graduation from law school, paid for with money I'd earned teaching kids how to throw punches and avoid them. 3 years of night classes while I covered the mortgage, the car payments, everything. "Come on, Jack," Nathan said, his voice dripping with that entitled tone I'd grown to hate. "Surely you've got a comeback for that." I looked around the table, 8 faces staring at me, waiting for the punchline to defend himself. Samantha's parents, who'd never thought I was good enough for their daughter. Her law school study group, who treated me like an interesting specimen whenever I showed up to these things. Claire, who'd been whispering poison in my wife's ear for months. "Actually, I do have something to say," I said, standing up slowly. My chair scraped against the polished floor. "But it's not a joke." The laughter died. Samantha's smile faltered just a fraction. "See, the thing about jokes is timing. And Sam here just told her last one at my expense?" I picked up my water glass. Hadn't touched the wine, couldn't afford to lose control tonight. "So here's mine. A woman spends 3 years in law school learning how to argue. Turns out she was already an expert." I drained the glass and set it down with a soft clink. "Thanks for dinner, folks. I'll see myself out." The silence followed me all the way to the parking lot. My hands shook as I fumbled with the truck keys, but not from nerves. From rage so pure, it felt like electricity in my veins. 20 years. 20 years I'd been the butt of her jokes. The blue-collar husband who didn't quite fit in her upwardly mobile world. The guy who paid the bills while she chased her dreams. The man who fixed things, who stayed quiet, who smiled and took it because that's what good husbands do. Not anymore. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, watching through the restaurant windows as they probably dissected what just happened. Samantha would be mortified, but she'd play it off. Make another joke about my temper, my insecurity, my inability to take a little ribbing. My phone buzzed, a text from her. "Really, Jack, you're going to embarrass me like that?" I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "That was nothing. Wait until you see what embarrassment really looks like." I deleted the message before sending it. Not yet. First, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. The jokes were one thing, cruel, but maybe just thoughtless. But there was something else. Something in the way Nathan looked at her. The way Claire smirked when she thought I wasn't watching. The way my wife had been coming home later and later, always with excuses about study groups and networking events. I started the truck and drove home to our perfect suburban house with its perfect lawn and perfect mortgage that I'd been paying alone for 3 years. The house felt different now, like a stage set for a play I was no longer willing to perform in. Samantha's laptop sat open on the kitchen counter, forgotten in her rush to get to dinner. She'd always been careless with technology, assuming I was too stupid to understand her digital world. Time to prove her wrong. Her email was still logged in. I scrolled through recent messages, looking for anything that might explain the growing distance between us. Most of it was school-related, but then I found a thread that made my stomach clench. Messages between Samantha and Claire, dating back months, screenshots of text conversations, photos I didn't recognize, and there, buried in a chain from last week, a hotel receipt forwarded from Nathan. One night at the Marriott downtown, hope it was worth the risk. Claire's response. She deserves some fun after being stuck with Captain Caveman for so long. Samantha's reply. It's not about fun anymore. I think I'm falling for him. I read it 3 times before it sank in. Then I kept scrolling. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. More messages, plans to meet Nathan at various hotels, discussions about how to handle me, how to keep me from getting suspicious, Claire offering to provide alibis to cover for late nights and weekend study sessions, and then the worst part. A message from just 2 days ago. Jack's getting suspicious. He asked about the hotel receipt I left in my purse. What should I do? Claire's response. Gaslight him. Make him think he's being paranoid. You're almost done with school anyway. Once you get that job at Nathan's firm, you can afford a good lawyer. A good lawyer. For the divorce she was already planning. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark kitchen, processing what I'd learned. My wife wasn't just having an affair, she was planning to leave me, probably had been for months. The jokes, the public humiliation, the constant belittling. It was all part of a strategy to make me look like the bad guy when she finally pulled the trigger. 20 years of marriage, and I was being written out of the story like a supporting character who'd outlived his usefulness. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Samantha. I'm staying at Claire's tonight. We need to talk tomorrow. I almost laughed. Of course she was staying at Claire's, probably calling Nathan right now, telling him how her caveman husband had finally shown his true colors. They'd spin tonight into evidence of my instability, my inability to handle her success. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. I'd spent 20 years in the boxing world, teaching kids not just how to fight, but how to think 3 moves ahead, how to read an opponent's weaknesses, how to wait for the perfect moment to strike. Samantha wanted a divorce? Fine. But she wasn't going to get the quick, clean exit she'd planned. If she wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real game looked like. I opened her laptop again and started taking screenshots. Every message, every receipt, every cruel joke at my expense. Then I created a new email account and began forwarding everything to myself. Evidence. That's what lawyers understood, right? By the time I finished, it was past midnight. I made myself a sandwich and ate it standing in the kitchen, planning my next move. The boxing gym opened at 6 in the morning. I'd go in early, work out the rage on the heavy bag, and then start making some calls. Vic would help. He'd been my best friend since high school, back when Samantha was just the pretty girl in my English class who wouldn't give me the time of day. Vic had never liked her, said she was too ambitious for her own good. Turned out he was right. I went upstairs to our bedroom, my bedroom now, I supposed, and looked around at all the little signs I'd been ignoring. The way she'd moved her things to one side of the closet, the separate checking account statements she thought I hadn't noticed, the new clothes, the expensive perfume, the sudden interest in working out. She'd been preparing to leave for months, maybe longer, getting herself ready for her new life with Nathan while I paid the bills and played the fool. Not anymore. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Tommy Reeves, a private investigator who'd been a regular at my gym for years. We'd never been close friends, but he owed me a favor. I'd trained his kid for free when money was tight after his divorce. It was late, but Tommy was a night owl. He answered on the second ring. Jack, everything okay? I need help, I said. The kind of help you're good at. There was a pause. Then, meet me at the gym tomorrow morning, 6:30. Thanks, Tommy. Don't thank me yet. This kind of thing gets messy. It's already messy, I said. I'm just evening the odds. After I hung up, I stood at the bedroom window looking out at our quiet street. Normal houses full of normal people with normal problems. In a few hours, Samantha would come home expecting to find me defeated, ready to have the talk she'd been planning. Instead, she'd find something she'd never seen before, a husband who was done being the punchline. I smiled in the darkness. The joke was about to be on her. Tommy Reeves looked exactly like what Central Casting would order for a private investigator. Rumpled clothes, 5 o'clock shadow at 6:30 in the morning, and eyes that had seen too much. He was waiting for me in the gym parking lot when I arrived, leaning against his beat-up sedan with a coffee cup in one hand and a cigarette in the other. You look like hell, he said by way of greeting. Didn't get much rest. I unlocked the gym door and flicked on the lights. The familiar smell of sweat and leather hit me like a comfort blanket. This place was mine in a way the house had never been. Come on in. Tommy followed me inside, his eyes scanning the equipment with professional interest. Nice setup. Your wife ever come here? Samantha. No, she thinks it's beneath her. I grabbed 2 folding chairs from the office and set them up near the ring. Coffee's in the pot if you want some. I'm good. He settled into one of the chairs and pulled out a small notebook. So tell me what's going on. I laid it out for him. The affair, the messages, the hotel receipts, the way Claire was orchestrating everything from behind the scenes, the graduation dinner that had finally opened my eyes to what I was dealing with. Tommy took notes without judgment, occasionally asking for clarification. When I finished, he leaned back and studied me. How long have you suspected? Honestly, part of me knew something was wrong for months, but I kept making excuses. She was stressed about school, about her future. I thought once she graduated, things would go back to normal. They never do, Tommy said quietly. When someone checks out of a marriage, they don't usually check back in. What are you looking for here, Jack? You want me to document the affair for divorce proceedings? I shook my head. I want to understand the whole picture. Who else knows? How long has this been going on? What's their end game? Revenge? Justice, I corrected. There's a difference. Tommy's smile was grim. Sometimes. What's your budget look like? We worked out the details. Tommy would do surveillance, dig into Nathan's background, maybe have a conversation with some mutual acquaintances. Nothing illegal, nothing that would come back to bite me in court. One more thing, I said as he was getting ready to leave. I want to know about Claire. Something tells me she's more involved in this than just providing alibis. The best friend? Yeah, she's been pushing Samantha toward this for months. I want to know why. Tommy made another note. Could be she just doesn't like you. Could be, or could be something else. After he left, I had the gym to myself for an hour before my first class arrived. I wrapped my hands and went to work on the heavy bag, letting muscle memory take over while my mind processed everything I'd learned. The thing about boxing is that it teaches you patience. You don't throw wild punches and hope for the best. You watch, you wait, you look for openings, and when you see one, you make it count. Samantha had given me plenty of openings, the laptop, the careless messages, the assumption that I was too stupid or too trusting to put the pieces together. Now I just had to decide how to use them. My first student arrived at 8, Jenny Martinez, a 16-year-old whose parents wanted her to learn self-defense. She was small but fierce, with quick hands and quicker reflexes. You seem distracted today, Coach, she said after landing a particularly good combination on the pads. Just thinking through some strategy, I said. Sometimes the best defense is making your opponent think they're winning. Rope-a-dope? Something like that. We worked for another 30 minutes before her mother arrived to pick her up. After they left, I sat in my office and stared at the phone, debating my next move. The smart thing would be to wait. Let Tommy do his work, gather more evidence, build an airtight case. But patience had never been my strongest virtue, and after 20 years of being the reasonable one, I was feeling less reasonable by the hour. I dialed Samantha's number. Jack? She sounded surprised. I thought you'd still be angry about last night. I was. I am. But we need to talk. I agree. Can you come home around noon? I'll make lunch. She'd make lunch, like this was just another marital spat that could be smoothed over with sandwiches and sweet talk. Like I hadn't seen the messages, didn't know about Nathan, hadn't figured out her game. Sure, I said. I'll be there. Good. And Jack? I'm sorry about last night. The joke was mean-spirited. I was showing off for my classmates, and I hurt you. That wasn't fair. The apology sounded rehearsed, like she'd practiced it in the mirror. Probably had, with coaching from Claire. We'll talk about it at lunch, I said. After I hung up, I called Vic at his auto shop. Jackie boy, heard you caused quite a scene last night. Samantha called Claire, Claire called my ex-wife, and you know how that goes. News travels fast. In this town? Faster than gossip at a church social. What's the real story? I gave him the abbreviated version. Vic listened without interruption, which was unusual for him. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You need help with anything? Maybe. I'm going home for lunch to hear her side of things. If this goes the way I think it will, I might need someone to vouch for my whereabouts later. You're not thinking of doing anything stupid, are you? Define stupid. Anything that gets you arrested. Then no, nothing stupid. Good. But if you need backup, you know where to find me. I spent the rest of the morning teaching classes and thinking about what I wanted to say to Samantha. Part of me hoped she'd come clean, admit to the affair, and we could at least end this with some honesty between us. But I knew better. She was a lawyer now, trained to never admit guilt, never show weakness. She'd stick to her story until the bitter end. At 11:30, I locked up the gym and drove home. Samantha's car was in the driveway, along with a silver BMW I didn't recognize. My jaw tightened as I realized whose car it probably was. She'd brought Nathan to our house, to the home I'd been paying for while she screwed around with her colleague. The front door was unlocked. I could hear voices from the kitchen, Samantha's laugh, a man's voice I didn't recognize. They sounded relaxed, comfortable. I stood in the doorway and took in the scene. Samantha at the counter making sandwiches, wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Nathan at the kitchen table, looking perfectly at home in my house, drinking coffee from my favorite mug. They both looked up when they saw me. Samantha's smile was bright and artificial. Nathan's was smug. Jack, you remember Nathan from last night. He stopped by to apologize for laughing at my joke. Wasn't that thoughtful? Nathan stood up and extended his hand. No hard feelings, I hope. Samantha told me you have a great sense of humor once people get to know you. I looked at his hand for a moment, then at his face. He was younger than me, softer, with the kind of confidence that came from never being punched in the mouth. His handshake was firm, but not calloused. Lawyer hands. No hard feelings, I said, squeezing just a little harder than necessary. His smile flickered. Nathan was just telling me about a position opening up at his firm, Samantha said, bustling around the kitchen like a 1950s housewife. Isn't that exciting? Thrilling, I said. What kind of position? Nathan rubbed his hand casually, trying to restore circulation. Junior associate. Perfect for someone just starting out. The pay is excellent, and there are opportunities for advancement. I bet there are. Samantha shot me a warning look. Nathan's being very generous with his time and connections. I'm sure he is. I sat down at the table across from Nathan, studying him like I would study an opponent before a fight. How long have you two known each other? We met in Professor Williams's constitutional law class, Samantha said quickly. Nathan was a great study partner. I bet. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Samantha playing the perfect hostess and Nathan playing the helpful colleague. They were good at it, I had to admit. If I hadn't seen the messages, I might have bought the act. But I had seen them. And now I was watching two people lie to my face in my own kitchen, eating food I'd paid for, making plans for a future that didn't include me. Nathan finally left around 1 o'clock, shaking my hand again and promising to keep Samantha informed about the job opportunity. I watched from the window as he got into his BMW and drove away. He seems nice, I said when Samantha came back from walking him to the door. He is, and he could be a real asset to my career. She started clearing the lunch dishes, not meeting my eyes. I hope you'll try to get along with him. We'll probably be seeing a lot of each other if I get this job. I'm sure you will. She finally looked at me then, and for just a moment I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. Jack, about last night? Forget about last night, I said. I overreacted. You were celebrating, having fun with your friends. I should have been more supportive. The relief in her eyes was almost comical. Really? You're not angry? I'm disappointed that you felt the need to make me the butt of the joke. But I understand why you did it. You're moving up in the world, and I'm still just a boxing coach. She came over and put her arms around me, the first time she'd initiated physical contact in months. You're more than that. You're my husband, you supported me through school, and I'll never forget that. But you're planning to leave me anyway, I thought. You're planning to take half of everything I've worked for and start over with your young lawyer boyfriend. I love you, she said against my chest. I love you too, I lied. That evening, after Samantha left for what she claimed was a study group celebration, I sat in my office at the gym and made a list. Not a to-do list, but an inventory of assets. Everything I'd built, everything I stood to lose, everything that mattered. The gym was mine, bought and paid for before we got married. The house was jointly owned, but I'd made every payment for the past 3 years. My truck was mine. The savings account, what was left of it after paying for her law school, was in both our names. If she divorced me, I'd lose the house, half the savings, and probably have to pay alimony while she started her new life with Nathan. She'd get to be the victim, the woman who finally escaped her brutish husband. Nathan would get the prize he'd been working toward. Claire would get the satisfaction of seeing her plan succeed, and I'd get to start over at 42 with nothing but a boxing gym and a reputation as the guy who couldn't keep his wife happy. Not if I had anything to say about it. My phone rang. Tommy Reeves. I've got some preliminary information, he said. You want to meet tomorrow morning? What kind of information? The kind that's going to make you very angry and very motivated. Trust me, you want to hear this in person. After I hung up, I sat in the darkness of my office and thought about the look on Nathan's face when he'd shaken my hand, the way he'd smiled when he thought I wasn't watching, the casual way he'd sat at my kitchen table, drinking from my mug, planning his future with my wife. Tomorrow, I'd start evening the score. Tonight, I'd let them think they were winning. The best fighters know that sometimes you have to take a few hits to set up the knockout punch. I'd been taking hits for months. It was almost time to start throwing them back. Tommy was waiting for me at the diner on 5th Street, a folder thick with papers spread out on the table in front of him. He looked like he'd been up all night, which probably meant he had been. Coffee first, he said when I sat down. You're going to need it. The waitress poured me a cup, and I took a long sip, studying Tommy's expression. He looked like a man who'd found something he wished he hadn't. How bad is it? Depends on your perspective. He opened the folder and pulled out a stack of photographs. Let's start with the obvious. Your wife and Nathan have been meeting at the Marriott downtown twice a week for the past 2 months. Always the same room, always pays cash, always uses a fake name. The photos showed them entering and leaving the hotel at different times, but there was no mistaking what was happening. Samantha looked different in these pictures. Younger, happier, more alive than she'd seemed at home in years. But here's where it gets interesting, Tommy continued, pulling out another set of documents. Nathan isn't just some junior associate looking to climb the ladder. His family owns a 30% stake in the law firm where your wife wants to work. I looked up from the photos. What? Nathan's father is Richard Caldwell, as in Caldwell, Morrison, and Associates. The firm isn't just offering your wife a job, they're bringing her in as Nathan's personal project. The pieces started falling into place. So this wasn't some accidental affair. Gets better. I did some digging into Claire's background. Turns out she and Nathan have known each other for years. They dated in college, stayed friends after. She's the one who introduced him to your wife? I set down my coffee cup carefully, afraid I might crush it. Claire set this up. That's what it looks like. And there's more. Tommy pulled out a bank statement. Claire's been getting regular payments from an account linked to Nathan's trust fund, $500 a month for the past 6 months. She's being paid to break up my marriage. She's being paid for something. Could be she's just providing information, helping Nathan understand how to approach your wife. Could be more than that. I stared at the bank statement, seeing Claire's smiling face in my mind. 15 years of friendship, of being welcomed into our home, of being trusted with our secrets. And she'd been working against me the whole time. There's one more thing, Tommy said quietly. I followed Nathan yesterday after he left your house. He didn't go back to the office. He went to an apartment complex on the north side of town. He handed me another photo. Nathan walking into a modern apartment building, his arm around a woman I didn't recognize. Who is she? Ashley Morrison, 24 years old, works as a paralegal at the firm, also Nathan's fiancée. The diner seemed to tilt around me. Fiancé? Engaged for 8 months. Weddings planned for next spring. Tommy's voice was matter-of-fact, but his eyes were sympathetic. Your wife isn't Nathan's first choice, Jack. She's his side project. I sat back in the booth, processing what I'd learned. Samantha wasn't just having an affair, she was being played. Nathan wasn't planning to leave his fiancée for her. He was using her, probably with his family's knowledge and approval. But that didn't make me feel sorry for her. If anything, it made me angrier. She was willing to throw away 20 years of marriage for a man who saw her as a temporary diversion. What do you want me to do with this? Tommy asked. Keep digging. I want to know everything. Nathan's financial situation, his relationship with Ashley, what the firm really has planned for Samantha. And I want to know more about Claire's involvement. That's going to cost extra. Bill me. I gathered up the photos and documents. And Tommy, keep this between us for now. I need time to figure out how to use it. After Tommy left, I sat in the diner booth for another hour, staring at the photos of my wife with her lover. She looked happy in a way I hadn't seen in years. Not just physically satisfied, but emotionally engaged. Like she'd found something she'd been looking for. Too bad it was all a lie. My phone buzzed with a text from Samantha. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Working late. Right. I drove to the gym and spent the afternoon teaching classes. But my heart wasn't in it. The kids could tell something was wrong. I was more aggressive on the pads, less patient with their mistakes. Finally, around 6 o'clock, I sent the last student home and locked up early. Instead of going home, I drove to the north side of town and found Nathan's apartment complex. It was one of those modern places with a pool and a fitness center, the kind of building that catered to young professionals with more money than sense. Nathan's BMW was in the parking lot. So was a red Audi I assumed belonged to Ashley. I sat in my truck for 20 minutes, watching the windows of what I guessed was their apartment. The lights were on, and I could see shadows moving around inside. A normal couple having a normal evening together, while Nathan's side piece thought she was building a future with him. My phone rang. Vic. Where are you? Samantha called looking for you, said you weren't at the gym or at home. I'm out, thinking. That's dangerous. You want company? Not tonight, but thanks. Jack, whatever you're planning, just remember, the best revenge is living well. No, I said, watching Nathan's apartment window. The best revenge is making sure the people who hurt you face consequences for their actions. I hung up and drove home. Samantha's car wasn't in the driveway, which meant she was probably at the Marriott with Nathan, believing whatever story he'd told her about why he couldn't spend the whole evening with her. The house felt different now that I knew the truth. Not like a home, but like a crime scene. Every room held evidence of the lies I'd been living with. The kitchen where Nathan had sat drinking from my mug. The bedroom where Samantha got ready for her dates with him. The living room where Claire had sat for years, pretending to be my friend while plotting my downfall. I went to my office, a small room off the garage where I kept my business records, and spread out everything Tommy had given me. Photos, bank statements, hotel receipts, background information on Nathan and his family. Then I opened my laptop and started researching. Nathan's firm, his father's business interests, his fiance's family connections. The more I learned, the clearer the picture became. Nathan wasn't just cheating on his fiancée. He was using Samantha to gain an advantage in some kind of business deal. The firm wanted something she had, some connection or knowledge or skill that would benefit them. Once they got what they needed, she'd be discarded. But Nathan had made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated the husband he was betraying. I spent the next 3 hours making notes, cross-referencing information, building a strategy. By the time Samantha came home at 11:30, I had the beginnings of a plan. She tried to be quiet, but I heard her in the bathroom, washing off the scent of her lover before coming to bed. When she slipped under the covers beside me, she smelled like hotel soap and guilt. "How was your evening?" I asked quietly. "Fine. Just some of the girls from class celebrating our graduation. Nothing exciting." She settled against me, and I could feel the tension in her body. "How was your day?" "Productive. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about supporting your career. I want to do better." She turned to look at me in the darkness. "Really? Really? In fact, I was thinking maybe I should get to know Nathan better. If you're going to be working together, I should make an effort to be friendly." That would mean a lot to me, Jack. Maybe we could have him over for dinner this weekend. You could cook that roast you used to make when we were first married." I felt her smile against my shoulder. "I'd like that." "Good. It's settled then." She fell asleep within minutes, exhausted from her evening of deception. I lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling and refining my plan. Nathan wanted to play games with my marriage? Fine. But he was about to learn that some games have consequences he hadn't considered, and Samantha was about to discover that the husband she'd been lying to wasn't as stupid as she thought. The dinner invitation wasn't about being friendly, it was about giving Nathan enough rope to hang himself. In boxing, we call it setting up the knockout punch. You throw a few jabs to get your opponent comfortable, make them think they know what you're capable of. Then, when they are not expecting it, you throw the hook that ends the fight. Nathan had been throwing jabs at my marriage for months. This weekend, he was going to walk into my house and give me the perfect opportunity to throw mine. I smiled in the darkness and finally fell asleep, dreaming of the look on Nathan's face when he realized he'd been outmaneuvered by the dumb boxer he'd been so eager to humiliate. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, the kind of weather that matched my mood perfectly. Samantha was in full domestic goddess mode, cleaning the house and preparing for Nathan's visit like she was hosting royalty instead of her lover. "Are you sure about the wine?" she asked for the third time, holding up a bottle of expensive red. "Maybe we should get something better." "It's fine," I said from my position at the kitchen table, where I was pretending to read the newspaper while actually watching her performance. "Nathan strikes me as the kind of guy who appreciates the finer things, but he'll be polite about whatever we serve." She beamed at me like I just paid her a compliment. "You're right. He's very sophisticated, but not snobby about it." Sophisticated. That was one way to describe a man who was cheating on his fiancée with a married woman while planning to discard both of them when it suited his purposes. "What time did you tell him to come over?" 7 o'clock. That gives me time to get the roast in the oven and set the table properly. She paused in her bustling around the kitchen. "Jack, I really appreciate you doing this. I know Nathan isn't your usual type of person, but he's important to your future," I finished. "I get it, Sam. I want you to be happy." The lie came easily now. I'd been practicing it for days, along with the role of the supportive husband who was finally coming around to his wife's new ambitions. She kissed my cheek and went back to her preparations. I finished my coffee and headed to the gym for my Saturday morning classes, leaving her to transform our home into the perfect stage for what was about to unfold. The gym was busy, weekends always were, with kids who had school during the week and adults who worked regular jobs. I taught 3 classes and spent an hour on the heavy bag, working out the nervous energy that had been building all week. Around 4 o'clock, Tommy called. "You sure you want to do this tonight?" he asked. "Once you pull this trigger, there's no going back." "I'm sure. Everything ready on your end?" "Ready. Just remember, stick to the plan. Don't let your temper get the better of you." My temper is the least of Nathan's problems. After I hung up, I sat in my office and reviewed the plan one more time. It was elegant in its simplicity, really. Nathan thought he was coming to dinner with the naive husband of his mistress. Instead, he was walking into a carefully constructed trap that would expose not just his affair with Samantha, but his engagement to Ashley and his family's real plans for my wife. The beauty of it was that he'd do most of the work himself. All I had to do was ask the right questions and let his arrogance hang him. I got home at 6:30 to find the house transformed. Samantha had set the dining room table with our wedding china, lit candles, and arranged flowers she must have bought that afternoon. The smell of roasting beef filled the air, along with the scent of her expensive perfume. She'd changed into a black dress I'd never seen before, probably bought for one of her hotel dates with Nathan, and styled her hair the way she used to when we were first married. She looked beautiful, and for a moment I felt a pang of something that might have been regret. Then I remembered the bank statements, the hotel receipts, and the photos of her laughing with the man who was using her. "You look nice," I said. "Thank you. So do you." I'd put on my good suit, the one I wore to funerals and court appearances. "Are you nervous?" "Should I be?" She laughed, but there was an edge to it. "No, of course not. It's just dinner." "Just dinner." Right. Nathan arrived precisely at 7, carrying flowers for Samantha and a bottle of wine that probably cost more than I made in a week. He was dressed casually but expensively, the kind of outfit that screamed money without being obvious about it. "Jack," he said, shaking my hand with that same firm grip I remembered from our first meeting. "Thanks for having me over. Your home is lovely." "Samantha's the decorator," I said. "I just pay the bills." He laughed like I'd made a joke instead of stating a fact that would soon become very relevant to his situation. Dinner started smoothly enough. Samantha served the roast with all the accompaniments, and Nathan complimented everything from the food to the wine to the way she'd set the table. He was charming, I had to give him that. The kind of man who could make anyone feel like the most important person in the room. "So Nathan," I said as we moved on to dessert, "Samantha tells me you're from a legal family. Your father's in the business too?" "Richard Caldwell," he said with obvious pride. "He founded the firm about 30 years ago. Built it from nothing into one of the most respected practices in the state." That must have been inspiring, growing up around that kind of success. It was. Dad always said the law was about more than just winning cases. It was about understanding people, knowing what they really want and how to give it to them. Interesting philosophy. "And what do you think Samantha really wants?" Nathan glanced at her, and I saw something pass between them, a look of intimacy that excluded me completely. "I think Samantha wants to make a difference," he said carefully. "She's brilliant, and she has a passion for justice that's rare in young lawyers." "Young lawyers," I repeated. "How old are you, Nathan?" 29. Same age as Samantha when we got married. I took a sip of wine and watched his face. Funny how life comes full circle sometimes. The conversation continued for another hour, with Nathan regaling us with stories from law school and his early days at the firm. He was a good storyteller, and under different circumstances I might have actually liked him, but these weren't different circumstances. And I hadn't forgotten the photos of him with his fiancée. "Nathan," I said as Samantha was clearing the dessert plates, "can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "Are you seeing anyone? Seriously, I mean?" He barely hesitated. "No, nothing serious. I've been too focused on my career to think about settling down." The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that I almost admired his skill. Almost. "That's too bad," I said. "A successful guy like you, from a good family, I'd think the women would be lining up." "There's plenty of time for that later," he said. "Right now, I'm more interested in building something meaningful professionally." "Like mentoring promising new lawyers?" "Exactly." He smiled at Samantha as she returned from the kitchen. "When you find someone with real potential, you want to invest in their success." Invest. Interesting choice of words. "Speaking of investments," I said, "I've been thinking about expanding the gym, maybe adding some new equipment, hiring another trainer. Samantha's always telling me I should think bigger." "That sounds like a great opportunity," Nathan said. "Have you considered bringing in a business partner, someone with capital to invest and connections to help you grow?" "I hadn't thought of that. You know anyone who might be interested?" "Possibly. What kind of numbers are we talking about?" For the next 20 minutes, Nathan grilled me about the gym's finances with the intensity of a prosecutor cross-examining a witness. He wanted to know everything: revenue, expenses, property values, growth potential. Samantha watched with obvious admiration as he dissected my business like a professional consultant. She probably thought he was being helpful, showing interest in her husband's work. I knew better. Nathan wasn't interested in helping me expand the gym. He was evaluating an asset, figuring out what I was worth and how that might factor into whatever plan he and his family had for my wife. "You've built something impressive here," he said finally. "With the right investment and marketing strategy, you could probably triple your revenue within 2 years." "That's very generous of you to say." "I'm not being generous. I'm being realistic. Location, established clientele, good reputation. You have all the fundamentals in place." He was right, of course. The gym was worth more than most people realized. Certainly worth more than Samantha knew, since she'd never shown any interest in the business side of my work. But Nathan knew. He'd done his homework, just like Tommy had done his. "Well," I said, standing up from the table, "this has been enlightening. Nathan, I can see why Samantha speaks so highly of you." "The feeling is mutual. You have a remarkable wife, Jack. You're a lucky man." "I am indeed." I looked at Samantha, who was glowing with happiness at how well the evening had gone. "In fact, I'm so lucky that I want to share some news with both of you." They looked at me expectantly. "I've decided to surprise Samantha with something special for her graduation. A little celebration just for our closest friends and family." "Jack, you don't have to." "I want to," I said firmly. "It's not every day your wife becomes a lawyer. I was thinking next weekend, maybe at the community center. Nothing too fancy, just good food and good company." Nathan's smile looked a little forced. "That sounds wonderful." "I hope you can make it. I'd love for you to meet some of our other friends, especially Claire. I know she's been eager to get to know you better." Something flickered across Nathan's face at the mention of Claire's name, just for a second, but I caught it. "Claire and I have actually met before," he said carefully. "Really? Samantha didn't mention that." Samantha looked confused. "When did you two meet?" "College," Nathan said quickly. "We had some mutual friends. It was a long time ago." "Small world," I said. "Well, then it'll be like a reunion." The evening wound down shortly after that. Nathan thanked us for dinner, complimented Samantha on her cooking one more time, and shook my hand with what seemed like genuine warmth. "I'm glad we did this," he said. "I feel like I understand you both much better now." "The feeling is mutual," I said. "Drive safely." After he left, Samantha practically floated around the kitchen as we cleaned up. "That went so well," she said. "I was worried you two wouldn't have anything to talk about, but you seem to really connect." "He's an interesting guy. Very ambitious." "He is, and he's been so helpful with my career planning. I don't know what I would have done without his guidance." "I'll bet you don't," I thought. "About the party," she said as we finished loading the dishwasher. "Are you serious about that?" "Absolutely. You've worked hard for this degree. You deserve to be celebrated." She threw her arms around me and kissed me with more passion than she'd shown in months. "I love you so much." "I love you too," I said, and for the first time in days, it didn't feel like a complete lie. I did love her, or at least I loved the woman she used to be. The woman who'd married me 20 years ago, who'd believed in our future together, who'd been my partner instead of my adversary. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone who could lie to my face while planning to leave me for a man who was lying to her. After she went to bed, I sat in my office and made the phone calls I'd been planning all week. The community center was available next Saturday night. The caterer could handle a party for 50 people. The DJ I'd used for other gym events was free. And Tommy had confirmed that Ashley Morrison would be in town next weekend, visiting Nathan for what she believed was a romantic getaway. Everything was falling into place perfectly. Nathan thought he'd spent the evening evaluating me, figuring out how to use my assets in whatever scheme he was running. Instead, he'd given me everything I needed to destroy him. The party would be my masterpiece, a celebration that would expose every lie, reveal every betrayal, and leave my enemies facing the consequences of their actions. I smiled as I turned off the lights and headed upstairs. Nathan had been right about one thing. When you find someone with real potential, you want to invest in their success. He just hadn't realized that the someone with potential was me, and I was about to become very successful at ruining his life. The week leading up to the party passed in a blur of preparations and barely contained anticipation. Samantha threw herself into planning mode, making lists of food and decorations and obsessing over every detail. Like this was the social event of the season instead of what it actually was, her public execution. "I can't believe you're doing all this for me," she said Wednesday evening as we addressed invitations. "It's so thoughtful." "You deserve it," I said, sealing another envelope. "Besides, it's not every day I get to show off my lawyer wife to all our friends." She beamed at the word lawyer like it was a magic spell that could transform her entire life, which in a way it was, just not the way she thought. Tommy called Thursday with his final report. "Ashley Morrison flew in this morning," he said. She's staying at Nathan's apartment through the weekend. They had dinner at Romano's last night. Very cozy, very romantic. She's definitely expecting a proposal soon. Perfect. What about Claire? That's where it gets interesting. I followed her to a meeting with Nathan yesterday afternoon. They met at a coffee shop downtown, talked for about an hour. From their body language, it wasn't a friendly conversation. Trouble in paradise? Could be. Or could be they're just nervous about something. Either way, they're both planning to attend your party. Good. The more players on the field, the better the game. Friday evening, I made one last trip to the gym to clear my head before the main event. The place was empty except for the cleaning crew, and I spent an hour on the heavy bag, working through combinations and thinking about everything that had led to this moment. 20 years of marriage. 20 years of building a life with someone who'd been planning to tear it down. 20 years of being the reliable husband, the steady provider, the man who fixed things and stayed quiet and never complained. Tomorrow night, all of that would end. I was locking up when my phone rang. Vic, you ready for tomorrow? He asked. Ready as I'll ever be. You sure about this plan of yours? Once you light this fuse, there's no putting it out. The fuse was lit months ago when my wife decided to screw around with Nathan. I'm just making sure everyone gets to see the fireworks. And you're sure this won't come back to bite you in the divorce? I smiled in the darkness of the parking lot. Vic, after tomorrow night, I don't think divorce is going to be Samantha's biggest problem. Saturday arrived bright and clear, one of those perfect spring days that made you believe good things were possible. Samantha was up early, bustling around the house and checking items off her endless lists. The caterer will be there at 4 to set up, she said, consulting her phone. The DJ arrives at 5. Guests start showing up at 6. What time did you tell Nathan to come? 6:30. I thought it would be better if he arrived after most of the other guests, so he doesn't feel overwhelmed by meeting so many new people at once. Thoughtful of her to worry about Nathan's comfort level. Too bad she hadn't shown the same consideration for her husband's feelings over the past few months. What about Claire? She'll be there early to help with hosting duties. You know how she is at parties. She loves being in the middle of everything. Claire did indeed love being in the middle of everything, especially when everything involved destroying other people's lives. I spent the afternoon at the gym, teaching a few private lessons and trying to stay calm. The community center was only a few blocks away, and I could see the catering trucks arriving as I locked up at 5 o'clock. When I got to the venue, the transformation was already underway. Round tables covered with white linens, a small stage for the DJ, a banner that read, "Congratulations, Samantha," in elegant script. It looked like exactly what it was supposed to be, a celebration of my wife's achievement. The guests started arriving right on schedule. Neighbors, friends from the gym, a few of Samantha's law school classmates. Everyone seemed genuinely happy to be there, ready to celebrate and have a good time. Claire showed up at 6:15, looking stunning, in a red dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payment. She made the rounds like a politician, greeting everyone with air kisses and compliments. "Jack," she said when she spotted me near the bar, "this is such a wonderful thing you're doing for Samantha. She's so lucky to have a husband who supports her dreams." "I've always believed in supporting the people I love," I said, "even when they don't deserve it." Something flickered across her face, but she recovered quickly. "Well, she certainly deserves this celebration. Law school is no joke." "No, it's not. But then again, neither is marriage." Samantha blinked, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Around her, the guests shifted uncomfortably, half horrified, half unable to look away. The energy in the room had transformed from celebration to spectacle in the span of 30 seconds. Glasses clinked faintly as someone set theirs down too hard. A cough broke the silence, quickly swallowed by tension thick enough to taste. "Nathan," I said, my tone steady, conversational even, "would you like to tell everyone how many women, exactly, you've been helping to study lately, or should I read the names from your messages?" He froze, color draining from his face. "This is insane," he said weakly. "You're making a scene." "Oh, I agree," I said, nodding. "But if you're going to make a mess of my marriage, I figure I might as well return the favor in public." Samantha shook her head violently. "Jack, stop this. You're humiliating yourself." "No, Sam," I said quietly. "I'm liberating myself." I stepped off the stage, my phone still in hand. "For months, I wondered why you always seemed too tired for me, but somehow had endless energy for your study sessions. Why your clothes smelled like cologne that wasn't mine. Why your credit card statements suddenly had hotel charges under conference catering. And now I know." Someone gasped. A woman near the buffet whispered to her husband, and he whispered something back without taking his eyes off us. You're lying, Samantha said, but her voice lacked conviction. This isn't fair. Fair? I echoed, stopping just short of her. What's fair about standing next to someone for 5 years, believing in their dreams, paying their tuition, cheering for them, and finding out they've been celebrating early with someone else? The silence that followed was overwhelming. Even the music had stopped, leaving nothing but the dull hum of lights and the faint rush of air in my ears. Samantha's eyes darted toward the exit, but there was nowhere to go, not without acknowledging the obvious. Nathan made a move toward her. Samantha, let's just leave, he muttered. I held up a hand. Oh no, Nathan. Don't slink away just yet. There's something else you should know. He hesitated, caught between pride and panic. You see, Nathan's been very busy, and not just with my wife, I said, turning to the crowd again. Turns out our friend here has a pattern. The receptionist at his office, the neighbor who dog sits for him, even a client's wife. He doesn't discriminate, he just likes to diversify. Laughter rippled through the crowd, sharp and nervous, like static before a storm. Nathan's composure cracked. You have no proof, he snapped. Oh, but I do, I said, scrolling through my phone and projecting a few choice screenshots onto the large TV behind me. The text glowed on the screen, Nathan's name clearly visible, accompanied by messages that left little room for interpretation. Recognize these? The room erupted in whispers. A few guests covered their mouths. Someone actually clapped once before catching themselves. Nathan's hands clenched at his sides. This is slander. It's documentation, I corrected, but call it whatever makes you feel better. Samantha swayed as if the ground beneath her had tilted. Her perfect night, her perfect facade, it was all collapsing under the weight of truth. Jack, please, she whispered. We can talk about this privately. I looked at her for a long moment, and when I finally spoke, my voice was low but clear. You made it public the moment you decided to share our marriage with someone else. Then I turned to the crowd. That concludes tonight's presentation. Thank you all for coming. Drinks are still on the house, at least until my credit card company processes the cancellation. The laughter this time was real, unrestrained. It rolled through the room like a wave, breaking the tension, releasing everything that had been wound tight. As I walked off stage, I caught Nathan's expression, somewhere between fury and humiliation, and Samantha's tear-streaked face, frozen in disbelief. For once, they weren't the ones in control. Outside, the night air felt cool and clean. I loosened my tie and breathed deeply, letting the noise of the restaurant fade behind me. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. It was from release, because for the first time in a long, long while, I wasn't the one pretending. I gestured toward the entrance, where Tommy had just appeared with a young woman I recognized from the surveillance photos. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Ashley Morrison, Nathan's fiancée. The room erupted. People turned to stare at Ashley, then at Nathan, then at Samantha. Conversations broke out in hushed, urgent tones. Ashley looked confused and hurt. Nathan? What's going on? Who are these people? Nathan's face had gone from puzzled to panicked. Ashley, I can explain. Can you? I asked. Because I'd love to hear how you explain having an affair with a married woman while planning your wedding to someone else. This is insane, Nathan said, his voice rising. You're making wild accusations. Am I? I pulled out a folder and opened it. Hotel receipts. Bank records showing payments to your accomplice. Photos of you entering and leaving the Marriott with my wife. Text messages discussing your plans to use her for whatever scheme your family is running. The room was in chaos now. Ashley was crying. Samantha was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Claire was trying to edge toward the exit. Oh, Claire, I called out. Don't leave yet. We haven't gotten to your part in all this. She froze like a deer in headlights. You see, folks, this wasn't just a simple affair. This was a coordinated effort. Claire here has been getting paid $500 a month to provide information about my wife and me. Bank records don't lie, Claire. Unlike people. You're insane, Claire said, but her voice shook. This is harassment. This is justice, I said. 20 years of marriage, and my wife was willing to throw it all away for a man who was using her. A man who's engaged to someone else. A man whose family probably sees her as nothing more than a useful asset to be acquired and discarded. I looked out at the crowd of faces staring back at me. Some looked shocked, others angry. A few seemed almost entertained by the drama. But here's the thing about truth, I said. It has a way of coming out eventually. Nathan, you wanted to evaluate my assets? Well, congratulations. You've just destroyed your own. Nathan made one last attempt to salvage the situation. This is all a misunderstanding. Is it? Ashley stepped forward, her face streaked with tears. Is our engagement a misunderstanding too? Is the wedding we've been planning for 8 months a misunderstanding? Ashley, please, don't. She pulled off her engagement ring and threw it at his feet. We're done. Whatever this is, whoever these people are, we're done. She pushed past Tommy and walked out of the community center, leaving Nathan standing in the wreckage of his carefully constructed life. Samantha finally found her voice. Jack, how could you do this? How could you humiliate me like this in front of everyone? Humiliate you? I stepped down from the stage and walked toward her. You humiliated yourself, Sam. You humiliated our marriage. You humiliated 20 years of building a life together. I just made sure everyone could see what you'd already done. This is cruel. No, cruel is planning to divorce your husband while he pays for your law school. Cruel is having an affair with a man who's engaged to someone else. Cruel is letting your best friend get paid to destroy your marriage. I looked around the room one more time. Thank you all for coming tonight. I think we've all learned something valuable about the importance of truth in relationships. People started filing out, some stopping to offer awkward condolences, others just eager to escape the drama. Within 20 minutes, the community center was nearly empty, except for me, Samantha, Nathan, and Claire. What happens now? Samantha asked quietly. Now you get to live with the consequences of your choices, I said. Nathan's engagement is over. His reputation is ruined. His family's law firm is going to distance themselves from this scandal as quickly as possible, which means your job offer is probably off the table. I turned to Claire. And you get to explain to your employer how you've been taking money to interfere in other people's marriages. I'm guessing HR departments frown on that kind of thing. You can't prove anything, she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. I don't have to prove anything. I just have to ask the right questions. Amazing how quickly the truth comes out when people start looking for it. Nathan finally spoke up. This isn't over. Yes, it is, I said. Your affair with my wife is over. Your engagement is over. Your reputation is over. Your plan to use my wife for whatever scheme you were running is over. What exactly do you think isn't over? He didn't have an answer for that. I walked toward the exit, then turned back one last time. Oh, and Sam, don't bother coming home tonight. Or any other night. You wanted a new life? Congratulations. You've got one. I left them standing in the empty community center, surrounded by the debris of their shattered plans, and walked out into the cool evening air. Vic was waiting by his truck, smoking a cigarette and grinning. Well, he said, that was something. That was justice, I said. What are you going to do now? I looked back at the community center, where the lights were still on, and 3 people were probably trying to figure out how to salvage something from the wreckage of their schemes. Now I'm going to go home, have a beer, and start planning the rest of my life. The life I'm going to live without liars and cheaters and people who think I'm too stupid to see what they're really doing. Sounds like a good plan? It is. And Vic, thanks for having my back in there. Always, brother, always. I drove home through the quiet streets of my town, past the houses where normal people lived, normal lives with normal problems. The gym would be there tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. My students would still need training, my business would still need running, but I'd be running it as a single man who'd learned the hard way that sometimes the best defense really is a good offense. The joke, as it turned out, was on them.